What do you know about Kelvin Joseph and the certainty of him making the roster?
Look, it's tough. I continue to maintain that they believe a lot in his potential, and they think that I think there's still people in the building who think they can help him along on this road to maturity and creating, bringing him into becoming a really good football player. But I also at the same time think that there's a lot of people who believe the growing pains with this maturity have been a little too intense without enough growth being seen along the way. And he's struggled a lot, and I think they wonder about his work habits at times and things like that. But the fact that he's still a year removed from being a second-round pick, I think that it'd be tough for me to see them walking away, but I don't think it's any a certainty that he's on this 53-man roster. And I think, Nick Eatman at DallasCowboys.com has referenced he doesn't think so. I know Brian and I talked about that on our podcast today, The Love of the Star, that Brian thinks that, it's absolutely something that should at least be considered as a possibility. And I think it's possible. I still have a hard time seeing it as likely. But Kelvin Joseph absolutely needs to step up, or else it's something like a Taco Charlton situation where they were not afraid to walk away before the end of that rookie contract.
How many corners are they going to carry?
I would guess they carry 6.
Could carry.
Would be my guess.
You're thinking, no, what about McQuamu? You're going to think he can play safety and corner?
I'm saying 6 because I think they will carry Kelvin Joseph. If they only carry 5, then yeah, it'd be because they believe McQuamu can play safety and corner, and that he would function as the 6.
Can I ask you guys about C.J. Goodwin, who we kind of don't talk about?
That's one of those ones. If you ask me about a guy that might be a surprise veteran cut, would be Goodwin, and I'll say this because when you watched him cover in the game last week, and you watched the All-22. He can't run anymore. He really can't. They got the corner on him one time, and then he had to turn and chase, and it was like there was huge separation. He's diving, he's not getting down the field like he once did. That would be one of those ones where everybody says, oh, Bones is going to keep a guy, but keep an eye on
Nashawn Wright now that might be the reason?
That's the guy.
Yeah.
That's the guy. It's Nashawn Wright. Nashawn Wright has replaced C.J. Goodwin as the special teams ace in my mind, and he plays corner as well, just like Goodwin does. And even though he struggled in the preseason game, he plays it better than C.J. Goodwin. So I think that you're on to something there when you mentioned Wright. I know, Zach, you saw that when we were out in Oxnard.
Yeah, they were loving
challenging
him.
Nashawn Wright and trying to get him, put him in more difficult situations in these special teams drills, and he kept rising above. And so, that's a guy that I think they think really, really highly of, and will function as the C.J. Goodwin replacement. I'd actually be kind of surprised if Goodwin made the roster at this point.
It's Bobby Belt here with you on 105 through the Fan. He is brought to you by the On-Time Experts. Okay, so Kelvin Joseph and the other corners, that's a point of interest for tomorrow as, positions could be won or lost. Where else on the roster do you think are the most high leverage situations going into tomorrow evening?
They're still going to have a lot of tough decisions to make on the defensive line. That's going to be, they're probably going to have to cut 2, maybe 3 guys that, will end up on NFL rosters this season. Won't just end up on practice squads, but will end up playing snaps somewhere across the league this year. So that's going to be an interesting position. I think, you want to see continued growth from Tyler Smith. That'll be a big thing. And then just kind of see how this offensive line depth is looking behind the starters, who we shouldn't expect to see many starters playing tomorrow, but see how some of this depth is coming along, see if any of these young guys are progressing. And then, of course, it's a constant evaluation up until I think they had a training camp as they decide, do we go out there and find a veteran wide receiver? I think they're going to continue to evaluate how these guys like Simi Fehoko and Dennis Houston and guys like that will step up. And it's funny, Brian, I know we've talked about, you and I both were kind of like, what is the deal with Dennis Houston? Like, why does everybody seem to be so high on him?
Sure.
In training camp, and then we saw some of it. I think in the game last week.
You absolutely have.
But I told you guys I kept hearing about his releases are really good, and he's always where he's supposed to be. There's never a time on a route where it's like, hey, you ran to the wrong spot. He's always running the right depth. He's in the right spot. Everything like that. I was talking to some people with the team this week, and I just had kind of asked them, like, what did you guys see in Dennis Houston when he was coming out? Like what was it that drew you guys to him? Because he was completely anonymous to me, and I think a lot of people. And somebody had told me that, Dennis Houston was basically the only offensive weapon on just a terrible football team at Western Illinois. They went 2-9 last year, and they didn't have much in the way of offense. And talked about how defenses consistently would try to bracket him on his routes, and he was still out there producing as the only possible threat on the ball. And they talked about how he's just very mature, really focused demeanor, and he kept working and kept grinding and kept staying dialed in even as his team was awful. And so it said a lot to them about his football character and what they saw on tape, being able to beat double coverage and things like that. It was something that they really believed in. So they had a high opinion of him when they signed him. This isn't just something that's been a huge surprise to them here over the summer. I think that they feel like it's been confirmation of what they believed when they signed him out of Western Illinois. So Dennis Houston is a guy that is not just a flavor of the month, I don't think. I think that's somebody that they think really, really highly of.
Does Will Grier take this job tomorrow night?
Man, I gotta think so. In terms of just from what we've seen, I haven't seen that Cooper Rush is better than him. I know we saw the performance against Minnesota last year, and that is a big thing. That's a big check in Cooper Rush's favor that Will Grier just cannot argue against. But the discrepancy of their play, Will Grier being solid throughout camp and Cooper Rush being, below average, if we're being honest, that discrepancy, that gap that's been created, the question is, okay, is that a big enough gap that it closes the gap between Cooper Rush has done it in a regular season game on the road and Will Grier has not? And I personally would feel like Will Grier's the better fit right now to be quarterback 2 behind Dak Prescott, but there is something to be said for what we've seen from Cooper Rush when he's been asked to step in a regular season game, the way that he's scrapped and the way that he's fought, to hang around the league at times where people have been trying to push him off the roster and push him out of Dallas specifically. He was a guy who last year, heading into camp, everybody thought Garrett Gilbert was going to get the job over Cooper Rush, and showed resilience and stepped in and played well when they asked him to. And so I'm not necessarily going to count out Cooper Rush because I think he's headstrong and proven that he can do it when called upon. But I feel like it's just Will Grier is the better quarterback right now and can run the offense in a more similar fashion in terms of his athleticism and his arm talent and things like that, and run it more similarly to what Dak does. And that's a big thing for teams when their quarterback goes out, is we want to be able to keep as much of the offense in as possible. We don't want Ben DiNucci's in there, and so Kellen Moore's got to drop all these different things that they don't normally have in the offense against Philadelphia. And so I think that Will Grier helps them maintain continuity as best they can, and he's been the better player in camp to this point.